Right. Welcome back, everyone. We're just going to have three very short little items now. The first of them on energy feedback approaches, making energy visible. Myself and Laura. Just to run through the idea behind the energy feedback altogether. We've talked about, Ruth, I think, mentioned double loop learning. Energy feedback mostly is about single loop learning. It's about learning to do one thing more effectively, really. And it comes, in theoretical terms, from this Kolb experiential learning cycle. Kolb's idea was that you do something, you think about what you've done, and you observe what the results are. From that, you generate ideas about what the activity's like. Then you try doing it differently, and you go around the cycle again. And in energy feedback terms, there's what you see on the right. So it's seeing the feedback on the consumption, or indeed on your generation, that allows you to connect what you've done with the consequences in terms of costs or kilowatt hours, carbon, comfort, whatever, and then you can make a change. If you cut out the feedback, you can't do the learning. So that's the basic idea, why we wanted to incorporate some feedback into this project. And now I'll hand over to Laura, and she will tell you some of the things that we did. Thank you.
Yeah, so we did, it's been mentioned before that we did quite a variety of different energy feedback techniques. One that we did that was mainly based at like the wider community was carbon mapping. So we tried to organise these alongside the low carbon communities, just so we would get the attendees that would find it most useful, I guess. So depending on which community you were talking about, either it would be, so in Kirklees, it was very much members of the council and different departments within that, or you went to like West Oxford, where there was lots of members of the community, and Hook Norton, again, lots of members of the community that were interested. So it was, I'm going to skip through these really quickly, actually. So I'm not going to go through this whole slide. Basically, the learnings from the carbon mapping was it is actually quite difficult for your normal person, I used it, to understand carbon. So whereas it worked really well in certain situations with the councils and things like that, it didn't necessarily engage individuals as much, except if they were very technically minded. So in, for example, Hook Norton, where there is a lot of people who are very, very techie, they really enjoyed it. We also did thermal imaging. Now, we did this at various levels. We combined this with carbon mapping workshops and used posters and a presentation that was like aside from the main one, so that people could come and have a chat with us on a one-to-one basis. But also at household level, we sent images of their own house to the households, and then with a follow-up researcher visit, we then used this as a prompt for discussion. I have to say, thermal imaging by far was a really good feedback tool. Not only did it engage people really quickly, but it also was really helpful to us as researchers, because we were able to sort of go, this is your house, that's a weird bit there, and they would be like, oh, well, this is that and that's that. And it was quite nice for us in terms of feedback from the householders, because after they'd received these images, I got an email from one household where we'd ended up wandering around her house quite a lot to try and track down why this was why it was. And she emailed me about 2 weeks later, because of that, she'd then gone and investigated, and it turned out that it wasn't anything to do with necessarily heat loss, but the mortar was eroding, and so she then went and fixed it. So it really sort of helped to engage people, help them understand where the main areas that they could improve. So it was good. And also it did provide reassurance to a lot of people that the improvements that they had made worked. We then also did a web-based energy and environmental visualization tool. So this was for... yeah. So this, quite a lot of learnings from this. So we set up with these guys at Energy Deck this platform where we were able to use the 5-minute monitoring data that we had gathered, and we were able to put it on the internet. So we sent out 50 invites via email, mainly because the other 11 didn't have an email account that we were aware of. So we also then sent up a postal invitation with a guidance brochure. I have to say, they were very nice about the guidance brochure, but still only 22 people signed up, and 5 needed significant help in accessing. With one, I actually had to go to his house and sit with him for about an hour and explain how to do it. But this was where it gets really tricky, was for some, it was far too complicated. For others, it was far too simple. So it was difficult. So it really does require active participation. We actually got a lot of good feedback in terms of if we were able to evolve that platform, I think a lot more people would engage with it a lot more in terms of this need for summary reports. So in terms of the data's there, people can't be bothered to go get it themselves. If you force it at them, then they can either, and it goes straight to their email, so say a summary report goes to their email, then they could either choose to look at it or choose to put it in a separate folder. And I think that probably would have helped a lot more. We also then took the learning from the web-based tool and its complexities and tried to create a personalised home energy report for each house that sort of simplified this ridiculously complicated energy and environmental data and performance of the low-carbon technologies, if applicable. So we sent these reports to 57 households, and then we followed it up about 2 or 3 weeks later with a visit. It was actually a really useful prompt for discussion between the researcher and the occupants. But again, we still didn't quite get that balance between complexity and simplicity. And again, the thermal imaging section, which was in this home energy report, proved most interesting to a lot of people, with most just going, that's just a bunch of numbers, but tell me more about that. So it really did help to engage. And I shall move on to the libraries.
Yes, we also used energy displays, home energy displays, as a part of this. I'm trying to think. No, I didn't actually show any pictures, but I don't really need to show pictures, do I? You all know what I'm talking about, these little owl monitors or effigies or onzos or that kind of thing. We did have a stock of energy displays we were able to use in this project. Some went direct into some of the case study homes, and some were set aside for use in energy display libraries. So each community, if it wanted to, was able to set up a library, and in 4 different places, West Oxford, Kirklees, Easterside and Hook Norton, they did have a try at this. As you see, not all the learnings from this project have been entirely positive, and the libraries certainly, they were not, you couldn't say that the libraries were particularly effective in terms of actually getting lots of displays out and used profitably. And there were very good reasons for this. A lot of it had to do with if you're setting up a display, you do need a library, you need the resources and the time to be able to do it properly. And you need at least one person who is knowledgeable, who has the time and the commitment to make a library work, I think. That would be one of the main lessons. And the other was, these displays actually get used in context, just like books do. If you borrow a book from the library, it is assumed that you know how to read. There are lots of people around, who will tell you how to read. There are lots of teachers paid to do this stuff, and maybe your parents have taught you to read already. So you go to the library, you get the book, you know how to use it. We haven't yet reached that point with energy displays. So the idea that you can just go to a library, get an energy display, and things are going to be all right, not so much. If you look at the top, in West Oxford, the energy displays were used by participants in a low-carbon living programme. So these were people who were meeting together every month, and they had a little arena, a place where they could talk about how they used these displays, and they could try and make sense of what the displays were telling them. And that was, by some margin, the most effective of the energy display libraries. So I guess from the libraries, it kind of brought home to us the message that we've got from other parts of this project too, that a fit and forget sort of approach to technology isn't going to be massively effective. The displays that actually went to people in the case study houses, there were 53 in all in the different communities. And we found that about half those people, once they'd had a display for between 7 and 21 months, and most of them had had these displays for at least a year when they were interviewed, so half of them were looking at it at least once a day. So they were persisting with their displays. And 3 out of 5 of them claimed they'd learnt something from their energy display about how to use particularly about their electricity use and which appliances use most, that sort of thing. Interestingly, most of those people also talked about their display or about energy with other people. So again, there's this sort of social dimension. And for them, a display was something that had helped them to have a vocabulary to talk about energy with other people. So it had been effective in that way. There wasn't much, most of them didn't have much help with the installation or use. I think that's really quite significant in terms of the fact that you only had about half the people still using their display frequently after a year or so. With the smart meter rollout, the deal is that you get an installer who will explain at installation what your display's there for, what it can do, and will help you to interpret it. Most of these people didn't actually get much help at the time of installation. A group of 5 of us researchers got together one morning, and we had breakfast at Ruth's, and we had a whole batch of these displays, and we tried to get them up and running, and we couldn't do it with some of them. Okay, so I just give you that for context. Yes. Question?
I'm just wondering if in Blaken's case, they were the ones that were already in situ, because we paid somebody to install them. But I'm presuming they're not.
Some of the ones that we interviewed were, yeah,
Mm.
they were.
So we got this range of responses from, the person who thought, presumably, oh, this is a piece of kit, I'll be able to deal with it, it'll be all right. We said we'd manage it, and to be honest, we didn't, and we pick it up and dust underneath it. And at the other end of the spectrum, someone who'd really had a light bulb moment, suddenly energy came alive to them to some extent, and it got me hooked. I took it to work to show people, talked about it, and now I'm a volunteer. So that sort of range of responses. And for a final slide, I think a really, to me, very interesting aspect to this has been the bringing together of all these different levels of feedback in one project. So there you have the large-scale carbon mapping, the energy displays at the community and household level, you've got the thermal imaging, you've got the web-based feedback, which only a few people use, and bringing it all together in a way, the integrating thing, the home energy reports. You know, the people who actually sat down with Laura in their homes and talked over what does all this mean, and that became a really valuable point at which these different types of feedback were brought together. So again, one size, you know, as Rajat was saying at the beginning, one size doesn't fit all. But if you have a whole palette or a spectrum of different types of feedback that you can bring to a community, I think we got the indication that this has potential, certainly. And that's all from me, all from us for now.